Morning, everyone. Welcome to our Careers in the Humanities event today. My name is Professor Pega Matalov, and I would like to begin our program by first doing some land acknowledgements. So at this time, we want to take a moment to reflect on the lands on which we reside. We're coming from many places, and we want to acknowledge the ancestral homelands and traditional territories of the indigenous people who have been here since time immemorial, and to recognize that we must continue to build our solidarity and kinship with Native people across Americas and across the globe. San Diego Mesa College is built on the ancestral homelands of the Kumeyaay people, and we acknowledge and honor their tremendous contributions to our region and thank them for their stewardship, past, present, and future. Please join me in a collective breath. Like I mentioned, my name is Professor Pega Matalov. I teach English here at San Diego Mesa College, and I also am the coordinator of the PATH program. PATH stands for Preparing Accomplished Transfers in the Humanities, and we help support students majoring in the humanities to transfer to UCSD and any other four-year institution that they want. And the program also supports them in getting jobs and careers that are, of their passion. So I wanted to put together, along with my colleague, Caitlin Choi from Work-Based Learning, we wanted to put together this panel just to show the world that the humanities are very much alive. Folks are majoring in them. Folks are getting jobs in them. And that you can kind of, become more aware of career options and use this event as a way to build relationships and connections with the panelists. And if you are, more interested in majoring in the humanities, double majoring in the humanities, minoring in the humanities, we got a counselor in the room, Counselor Chris Kalk, but also you can email me at my email address that I'm dropping in the chat, and I can connect you with the counseling program. So before we start the program, I wanted to show a clip, a little visual. This is an interview between the talented actress Viola Davis and Oprah Winfrey. I won't really summarize, I'll just show you all the clip. But I think once you watch the 4 or 5 minute clip, I think you'll kind of start to understand why I'm showing the clip. So I'm going to share my screen. I could watch that whole interview over and over again, but it's on Netflix, and I highly recommend you watching the whole the interview, but also reading her book Finding Me, because she talks about how the humanities, her love for theater, is what really saved her. And like somebody wrote in the chat, the humanities are essential. So it's not just saving you as a person, but saving society in general. And so today we have a whole panel of professionals who will talk about how they're contributing to society, how they're making our world a better place, majoring and doing the work that they love, but also giving us examples of leadership to follow. Our moderator today is PATH student Ichi. Ichi is an English major at San Diego Mesa College, and Ichi is finishing their associate degree for transfer at Mesa College this spring. They plan to finish their history major requirements for an associate degree for transfer in fall 2023. They plan to transfer to UCSD in fall 2023. Ichi enjoys photography and painting as some of their favorite hobbies. Their favorite book is Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley. They work full-time currently while finishing their humanities degree in English. Welcome, Ichi.
Let's go through the introductions with everyone, just so we can get introduced. So just the degrees everyone has, and a brief summary. And, can start with whoever would like to go first.
I can go first if you'd like me to. My name is Sarina Dahlan. I'm currently a full-time writer. I wasn't always a writer. I studied at UCSD and double majored in psychology and visual arts. I was actually in a corporate environment for 16 years, and prior to that I was in advertising. So my world was completely different, and I decided to become a writer in 2017. Fell in love with it, and now I have 2 books. One, actually, Reset, came out in 2021 during the middle of COVID. That was fun. And then Preset's coming out in May of this year.
Asma, would you like to go next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Asma Abdi. I'm a policy associate with PANA, focused on affordable housing, equitable development, and tenant protections. I serve as co-chair of the Equitable Development Committee, a regional coalition working to advance affordable housing and fair transition to a zero carbon economy and transit. Prior to joining PANA, I was a legal rights organizer at Alliance San Diego, providing direct services to the immigrant community to advance human rights priorities. And while I was in college, I interned for Pillars of the Community, the American Federation of Teachers, UCSD Center on Global Justice, and the Center on Policy Initiatives as part of their Students for Economic Justice program. I'm a native San Diegan, born in Southeast San Diego and raised in East County. My parents are refugees who immigrated from Somalia in the early 90s. I received my associate's degree at San Diego City College and a bachelor's in literature at UCSD, where I was a Chancellor's Associate Scholar. I had my writing published in A Community of Readers, a thematic approach to reading, the 8th edition, and also Reclaiming Our Stories too. And during my free time, I enjoy photography, yoga, exploring new places, being by the ocean, and spending time with my loved ones. I'll pass it off to Roslyn. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roslyn. I'm a union representative for SEIU. I represent workers in the public sphere and the private sphere as well, healthcare workers. I'm sure you've seen Red Cross mobile sites all over San Diego. I represent those folks that draw blood. And then I also represent folks at the Housing Commission. I wasn't always a union organizer. I didn't even know I would want to be a union organizer. I'm telling you, I had no idea I would be here. But I started off at community college at actually in Sacramento. And then a lot of life things happened with family. And so I dropped out of school and I took a break for a really long time and actually went back when I was 25 and completed I went to community college at Mesa and stumbled across PEGA and the PATH program, and the rest was history. But it really was quite literally my pathway into UCSD. And there I studied literature and writing. And after I graduated, it was a really scary time. We were in a global pandemic. Had a lot of mental health issues, a lot of things that I was going through. And so it was a scary time, but ended up in education and social services. And then stumbled across being a union organizer. We'll get into that later. But happy to be here, and I will pass it off to Professor Erica.
Thank you. It is wonderful to hear about all these wonderful accomplishments. I'm really, humbled sitting here. My route was very circuitous. I started out with a bachelor's degree in anthropology. And then I just kind of stumbled into different careers because that doesn't directly translate to a job out there. So I did a little bit with the museum world, the nonprofit world, and then I was in public health. And then I went on vacation and I had an epiphany and I said, you know what, I want to be a high school math teacher. So I came back from vacation, I quit my job, and I went and got my master's in credential to be a high school teacher. And I liked math, but I really loved literature. And so then I went and got my English credential so I could teach both, which I really enjoyed doing. I also taught a course called AVID, which was geared toward helping students go to four-year colleges and community colleges after graduation. And then I was at the high school right next to Mesa, by the way. I was at Kearney. And I know there's plenty of Kearney students in some of your classes still, because they have a strong partnership between Mesa and Kearney. And there was an opportunity at UCSD to come back to the program where I got my degree and my credential and teach new teachers. And so that's what I do now is I work with teachers getting their credential for the middle school or high school level. And so I really enjoy that because I get to teach, but then I'm also in school sites every week all over the county. And so I love finding out what's new and exciting going on throughout our county. And I will turn it over to Professor Jorge.
Thank you very much. The last shall be first. Feels like it. And it's like high school and, flashbacks from being picked last. But anyway, it's okay. So my name is Jorge Villalobos. I'm a professor, associate professor of English and English language acquisition here at Mesa College. I'm also the DEBER, it's a bilingual education program from San Diego State. So I'm the director here at Mesa and City College. I got my master's in literature and writing from Cal State San Marcos, and my bachelor's from the same program at Cal State San Marcos. And I came from community college. I went to Palomar College of North County, where I got my Associate of Arts degree in liberal studies because I always wanted to be a teacher. I remember I grew up in Mexico, so I remember going to school and kind of mimicking my teachers when I was a kid. And there was a novela that I used to watch back in the 80s and 90s. Oh my gosh, I'm old. And there was this teacher. She had this amazing group of diverse students, and I loved that novela. I wanted to be her. So anyway, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. So here I am, and I'm excited to be sharing what I do and reaching out to Latinx students who also want to become educators.
So yeah, now that we got all the introductions done, let's move on to the next set of questions. How did you all decide on your majors or your degrees? And we can start with Sarina.
So I decided on psychology first because I was really interested in the human mind, and UCSD was essentially the best school that I got into. I applied to a bunch of different state colleges because I was actually the one paying for my own education. I didn't have any parents I had parents, but I was the one paying for it. So I chose state schools. And so I came down here, and UCSD is very academically rigorous. So I took art on the side to kind of, get kind of relax, and then I ended up taking so many classes that it ended up being a double major. And I was just saying earlier before that I actually took some classes at Mesa College because I was trying to finish it in 4 years. Again, because I was paying for it myself. And so those were the decisions. There were practical ones married with personal interest.
Asma, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so I chose to study literature because it was one of my passions growing up. I always loved reading and writing, and so I wanted to sort of build off of my strengths. When I was in community college, I was sort of undecided major-wise, but I always had a dream of teaching English as a foreign language, so that's sort of what informed my decision, which I have yet to do. But having such amazing professors at City College, like Professor Alexander, Professor Mayhew, who taught us such amazing books, which still have an impact on me to this day. And they also like sort of invited us to community events where we met authors like Cornell West. And so it was just amazing. And that knowledge is what inspired me to study literature because I genuinely enjoyed like dissecting readings and grew so much as a writer through my experience at City College and UCSD. And we had so many fruitful conversations, and that inspired me to pursue literature. Not just my professors, but the campus itself had impact on my career trajectory.
Professor Heinzman, would you like to go next?
I majored in anthropology because there was a lot of it brought together a lot of different interests for me. Because I love culture, I loved sciences, and so there's the physical anthropology aspect, and then archaeology really brought in this like historical perspective. And so I really appreciated that. As far as the other degrees, in both cases, because I have a master's and then I went ahead and got my doctorate much later. It was just a moment where I just knew I wanted to go back. Like, it wasn't like you just felt unsatisfied where you were at the moment. And I knew there was new learning I needed and I didn't have. And there were conversations that were happening that I wasn't a part of. And I knew if I went back that I could be a part of those conversations. And so in both cases, I went back when it just felt right. Like, it was like, this is the moment to go back. And so, yeah, like, I think there was a span of almost 30 years between all my degrees. So yeah, you can do it over time. I used to always tell my students that education is one of those beautiful things that nobody ever really regrets, and the door is always open. So you can always at any moment join in. And I will pass, or you're doing that, so I'll let you do that. Sorry.
Roslyn, would you like to go next?
Yeah. So how I decided on my major, well, I started off with, like I said, I was living in Sacramento, and I wanted to pursue a nursing major. And so I started off with that, and the classes just weren't fulfilling at all. I was getting a little depressed because I wasn't being fulfilled by something that I thought was, because I always had the notion of I want to do something that is going to change the world, right? Or going to change society in some sort of way, positive way. But I just wasn't feeling fulfilled. And I was like, if I'm not fulfilled, if I'm depressed, I can't help anyone else. And then I started realizing that I don't like bodily fluids or blood. So it wasn't going to be the pathway for me. But then I ended up dropping out of school. I was getting into a lot of trouble, to be honest. And so I had to take a step back, and ended up moving to San Diego. And I had an epiphany. I wanted to go back. I was smart enough and willing to do it. I could do it. But I had to pay for it all myself. So it was really a barrier of going back at a certain age because you don't get your financial aid. So there's a lot of barriers. You have to wait a certain age. So I had to wait till I was like 24, 25 to have my own, to claim myself, right? So I was like, okay, I'll wait. That way I could pay for it and still work and pay rent and stuff like that. So I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. That's how I'm going to change the world. and shortly wasn't feeling fulfilled by that. But that is the beauty of community college. And so there's a lot of time that I was able to like take a wide variety of classes, and stumbled across the PATH program and decided on literature and writing. It was just something that was very general. And I had heard a lot from folks that went to law school that was the major that they took as well, because it was just a overall like a well-rounded general major to take, and you do a lot of writing, so it's like prepares you for law school. Before I graduated, I started studying for the LSAT, and that wasn't fulfilling me either. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go straight and just start working. If it doesn't align with my major, it's fine. I'm just gonna start working somewhere. So I started working for the Y, and then slowly just built a lot of connections and networked through the nonprofits. Yeah, so the reason I chose it, I think I just went through a lot in life, and it was just, honestly, it was something that was just very general and easy to choose. I really just wanted to get into UCSD and just continue there. So not saying I just chose it blindly, it was a passion of mine, of course, but there are things like that where it's very general, and even if you still don't know what you want to do when you transfer, you can have that. It's like a very general overview, and you can go into a lot of different venues and different workplaces and jobs that, yeah, the humanities is just overall really great. But yeah.
Thank you. Profe Villalobos, would you like to go next?
Yeah. So let's see the question. How do you decide on your major? So as I mentioned, I always wanted to be an educator, a teacher. And then when we moved from Mexico to the US, that kind of went away because I had, being the oldest in my family, I had to help my parents. It wasn't like an option for me to continue with school. My parents were very straightforward with me and said, that's all we could do, you know, make sure that you finish high school and on your own. And I went to, again, Palomar College, where I started to take ESL classes. And I really, that desire to become an educator revived, because I did see these educators, these professors being so involved in the students' lives. And, you know, that actually, again, revived that feeling that I wanted to be an educator. So when I went to speak with a counselor, I didn't get a lot of guidance. The only options they gave me was, well, you want to be an ESL teacher, you can go to San Jose State, you know, and that was an option for me because I had to help my parents. I couldn't leave my family. I couldn't stop working. That wasn't a privilege that I could have. And on the other side, I had the pressure not to continue to become a professional, but to help my parents, you know, because I was the third income, and there was no other option. There was non-negotiable. So I didn't have those possibilities to leave my home, let alone a whole city, to go all the way to North California to study. So the only option that I had was the closest four-year college, which was Cal State San Marcos. So the only option within that option was literature and writing. And I was really scared because, again, I'm not a native speaker. I never felt comfortable enough reading in English, let alone speak in English. But I did, kind of going back to what the video at the interview was saying, the courage, you know, the courage makes you brave. And I was like, well, you know, I'm just going to go, because there was a point in my life where my dad, being a gardener all his life and a factory worker, he took me and my brothers, I'm the oldest and I have three younger brothers, he took us to this beautiful house. You know, it's a beautiful house with a large backyard. And it was in the summer, so it was super hot. And I hated, and still hate with my guts working outside, dealing with dirt. And I sat down and I refused to help. And then he told me, you have two options here. Either you continue working with me, and because this is your path, or you go and study hard and do something for your life. So I said, okay, this is it. So anyway, that's how I ended up going and say, you know what, this is, I don't want to keep working there. And not that is a bad thing. You know, I do appreciate that teaching. My dad is super quiet, very reserved, always mad. But those little things and his hard work always taught me, you have to work really hard to get to where you are. Knowing where you are, knowing your limitations, knowing that we are immigrants, that at some point I was undocumented too. So all those limitations kind of prevented me. And that was definitely a pressure that I had. And it was scary. It was just scary because I didn't have any guidance or any role models to look after or to follow. It was just me figuring out, okay, let me try this, let me try that. And now being in this position as a professor and also as a director for bilingual education, it's like, you guys, you don't know how hard it is when you don't have that guidance, when you don't have that role model, when you don't have that support from your family or the system, so take advantage of this. But anyway, I think we're going to talk about it later. But just to go with the questions, yeah, it was hard. It was a lot of pressure. And also when speaking with, I have cousins, relatives in Mexico who are doctors, surgeons. There are business people, and I think that the way they see education is a synonym of money. You go to get a degree for law or for doctor medicine or whatever. But when I tell them, yeah, I'm a professor, and they just look at me with that, like, really? You have your master's to be a professor? I could have been something else. And that's another thing that I always have to fight. Even though I have a good job and I love my job and I'm passionate about it, I always have to prove to people that this is a really good profession too.
Thank you so much. So yeah, next question. Was it scary or difficult to figure out what you would do with your degree after you graduated? And let's start the question off with Roslyn, if you would like to go.
Yeah, you can go. Yeah, it was terrifying. It was so scary. I was so terrified because it was during a global pandemic. I didn't, not a lot of people were hiring. I knew I was on the path of doing what I love, but that don't pay the bills. So it was like it was hard. But I think I had set myself up enough during my times at community college and UCSD that, okay, at least I have some connections where I could reach out and I could, start building interpersonal relationships and lean on that, right? Like lean on my relationships that I created with folks within PATH and within the arts and humanities, across all campuses. I went to City College as well. And really just leaned into that. But I would be lying if I said, yeah, everything was great, and it is a different time now for when we were all graduating, and it's still a difficult time. We're still in this global pandemic and people are still getting sick, and, I fight bosses every day. So I see the terrible things that working class folks have to go through. And also, the way that, mostly women were let go during the pandemic. It was like 70% of the workforce was women. And so I work with mostly women in the workforce, right? Like a lot of healthcare workers, teachers, folks at the Housing Commission. So not only are we, paid less and just dealing with a lot of things in society with their rights being taken away, it is hard for working class folks on top of all the things that they're going through in society, and then having to deal with, the terrible working conditions. But yeah, going back to the question, I mean, of course, yeah, it was very scary. But I think I had hope throughout the whole time, because I think that's and it was like the whole world's going through the pandemic. So it was like everyone was sort of in it together. Like I'm sure Asma felt the same way during that time, as well as all the other graduates during, I think it was the 2021 PATH cohorts. Yeah, we all felt that.
Thank you so much. Asma, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I definitely resonated with a lot of what Roslyn shared. For me, it was very scary and tough figuring out what to do with my degree after graduation. I graduated from UCSD class of 2020. So right when we went into lockdown for COVID, I was actually unemployed for a year post-grad due to the pandemic. But I was like, man, I shouldn't have studied literature. Look where it got me on unemployment. Like my parents were right. I should have became a doctor. But then I started working at Alliance San Diego as a legal rights organizer, where I was like on the way to becoming a Department of Justice accredited representative to handle immigrant legal cases. And then I was offered a position at PANA, where I'm at now. And this is a lot more policy related, but all these issues are very much connected. And so I've been here for almost a year now. And I think that, you know, even though it was scary and tough for me, like you will find a pathway, and I believe that, you know, everything happens for a reason, and it's best to just choose what you're passionate about. At least for me, that's been something that I felt like pressured to pursue a degree that pays more, but especially for my parents. But I decided to follow my passions instead because like that video that Pega shared earlier, Oprah and Viola Davis were mentioning like denying your creative spirit leads to depression. And that's something that I personally really resonate with. And I appreciate the stories many people on this panel have shared, that you don't need to follow like a typical route to be fulfilled. And you really just need to do what's best for you.
Thank you so much. Professor Heinzman, would you like to go next?
Yes, it's absolutely scary. What you're saying, Roslyn and Asma, definitely resonates with me and Professor Jorge. I would definitely say though, in listening to responses, there's a common theme, and that theme is that you stay true to what your passion is, and at some point it kind of, you know, you find a way to thrive with that passion. But it doesn't mean that that's easy, or there's like an immediate answer, like you walk across stage and then suddenly there's a job offer and all of that. And so I would just encourage you to stay open to possibilities and open to stay curious about the world, and there will be something that comes along. And it's one of those horrible things though, you can't time it. You can't, it's not like this immediate answer comes to you, but there will be something that comes forward and you're like, yes, that's the direction. I graduated college and I was like, what am I going to do with anthropology? And I felt horribly lost. I also said there are like two things I never want to do, and one of those was teaching, and now I've spent 2 decades teaching and love it, and it's my passion. So life can sometimes take a lot of twists and turns. And so it's really hard in the moment though. But I encourage people to have like the resilience and to keep moving forward. So.
Thank you. Profe Villalobos, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. So I think I tried to answer the 3 questions at once, but we are on the 3rd question, I believe. Okay, so just gonna elaborate. So yeah, it was difficult for me to, scary for sure, knowing or not knowing where to go. One of the things that the program at Cal State San Marcos has, which I really appreciated, they brought in English chair faculty from Palomar and Miracosta to talk to us about, you know, what to do when we get our degree, how to apply, who do we contact. But it was definitely scary, you know, and not only applying and putting together your CV and all the stuff that you need to do, and also knowing that you don't have a lot of experience, or maybe none, you know, of experience teaching. That was another difficult thing to me to accept. And at the same time, you are pretty much at the expense of the faculty, of the chair of the departments, to give you whatever is left, you know, because they always go by seniorities, because, you know, full-time faculty, part-time faculty with seniority, and then at the end is the new faculty coming in. But you have to take whatever, whatever it is that they offer you, and it's okay. Yeah, I have to go to Camp Pendleton. I'll drive to Camp Pendleton, and then back to Oceanside, and then to Costa San Marcos, and then Escondido. So I was like all over North County, driving around, all day long teaching. So that's also scary, and then walking into the classroom for the first time and looking at your students who are really scared, but you're scared too. It's a lot of those things. But again, I think that the recurrent theme happening here is like that desire, that courage that you have. And even though it's scary, you just have to do it because, that's your job now, that's your life, and you have to be okay with it. But, looking back at it, I'm really happy that I did it.
Thank you so much. Sarina, would you like to go next?
Yeah, my turn. So yes, I was terrified because when I went into psychology, I thought I was going to get a graduate degree and become a psychologist. But once I was in it, for me, a year off. I had a year off to go and do a documentary in Thailand and Indonesia. And I picked countries because I have family members in each. And a documentary was actually about my family. So I took that year to calm myself and try to figure out what's next. And when I came back, I still didn't have an answer. But I was faced with this, student loan that I had to pay back. I was all the problems that I had before I left for that 1 year off was still there waiting for me. So I had to kind of go down the list of what I needed to do. I ended up going back to school and I took a couple of classes at Grossmont College. And somehow I stumbled across this job at an ad agency. And I went in and got a job, and I learned on the job that I was actually really good at it, and I was able to use both psychology and visual arts, and I made quite a few connections. And through my taking classes at Grossmont, I also connected with a professor whose friend was looking for someone to fill a position at a major telecommunications company. I went in, applied, and got that too. So both jobs ended up being like almost full-time jobs, and I was juggling two jobs. So from someone who didn't have a job, I was struggling, working essentially 7 days a week. And so I ended up having to choose one, and I chose the corporate route. So from someone who studied psychology and visual arts to go into the corporate route was a change. But then as I was doing the job, I got the job in marketing. As I was doing the job again, I realized that, hey, what I learned in school actually also apply here in both psychology and visual arts. Through series of changes, a series of acquisitions and mergers, I ended up at the corporate level business strategy, which is completely like I was managing millions of dollars doing strategies for a telecommunication company. Again, it's one of those things where, yeah, my humanities degrees fed into that too. So I was doing things that I never thought I would, and was well paid for it. And I've actually known a few friends who were directors of marketing who studied English degree. And they did really well because essentially humanities, what it is at its core is understanding human. It's how we interact, how we talk to each other, what does it mean to be human, and that human experience, you connect that with anything, you're connecting dots. So that knowledge is extremely helpful anywhere you go, anywhere you go. There are so many people out there who are so smart, but don't know how to communicate. And the ability to communicate will take you far. Then in 2017, the business that I was in was acquired by another company, and I was told move to the East Coast, or we'll give you a severance package. I chose severance package because I'm in San Diego and nobody leaves San Diego when you're already here, right? It's like, I'm not going to snow. So I stayed, and I was, again, well taken care of with a nice severance package. And that's when I took it like that 1 year after college, where I was like, let me recenter, let me refine myself, who I am and what I really want to be. Because at that point, after having been in a corporate environment for 16 years, I was so far away from the person who made that decision to go to Thailand and Indonesia after college to do a documentary. I was so far from that person. And I chose writing because I sat down one day and I wanted to tell a story. And an idea came, and I held on to it, and I told the story. And I didn't know anything about being a writer, about a career in writing. I just kind of dove in, and that it's the video of Viola Davis when she was talking about, like wanting to break, like, and understand human, and feeling, this connectedness. It happened to me. And so that's how I kind of chose it. It's almost like I didn't choose it, it chose me. And then because I didn't know any better, I just kind of went for it. I didn't know how to get an agent. I did a Google search. I found an agent, and then I queried her. She accepted me. She went and sold my book, and then, and then the rest is history. I had no idea how difficult it was supposed to be. Now I do, but that's also another thing that's good to keep in mind. It's you have to be open. You have to stay hungry. You have to stay curious, and you have to know that the knowledge that you have in humanities that you took, year after year after year, those stay with you. It isn't a skill set per se, it becomes a mindset. So that's my story.
Thank you so much. So the next question, were you pressured to pursue a degree that was perceived to be paid more? And we'll start the question off with Professor Heinzman.
Yes and no. A lot of people are like, what are you going to do with anthropology? And I was really worried when I graduated, just because I need a job and, all of that. So yes, in the sense that I wanted to be financially stable and I wanted to have a job, but I wasn't necessarily pressured. But yeah, it was a tough time. And I also wanted to do something that mattered, and that was really important to me, and trying to figure out how to combine a living with doing something that I felt really was important in the world. So
Thank you. Asma, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I feel like I sort of covered this a bit earlier, but I definitely resonate with what Professor Erica just shared about doing something meaningful over something lucrative, because I feel like the money will find you eventually. It's like I'm working my first big girl, quote unquote, big girl salary job. And I never thought that would happen for me and through the arts and humanities. And so I feel like, those things come as you go. And you just really have to follow your passion. At least that's something that I feel like, like I mentioned earlier, like with the whole Oprah and Viola Davis video, like I feel like denying my creative spirit has led to depression. And I feel like I'm choosing to do like what's best for me and follow my passions instead of the pressures that I feel to do what pays more. And that's something that I definitely struggle with every day, you know, still. But, you know, I think that, you know, the future is, you know, the fusion of sort of like doing what is best for you, but also, you know, figuring out like how you can level up in your career as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Sarina, would you like to go next?
Pressured, yes. At the beginning, it wasn't in the major that I chose. I chose based on love, and however, in jobs, because I had, you know, a huge debt, I was faced with having to make some you know, decisions that are more practical. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I feel like our society sometimes expect us to be one thing. If you have this one talent, they're like, okay, do that. And I feel like it stems from this kind of hyper capitalist mindset. Whereas I feel like, why can't you be everything? You know, you take life as it comes, and then you grab onto that. And then when it flitters away, you grab onto another thing, and it becomes like, the more you grab onto it, you don't realize it at the moment, but you are climbing up to the place where you're supposed to end up being. And actually, I love the fact that it's not all written down. It's like when I approach a book, I don't know what's going to happen. And that's what keeps me interested. And I feel like, why should we also take life that way? If we write our entire story, sometimes we kind of miss out on the opportunity to explore, to really drink in what the love of life is supposed to be. Sometimes we forget that our human experience isn't just about filling the hours and filling our bank account. Those moments happen, and when they come, they come. But at the end of the day, the human experience is so much more.
Thank you so much. That's very true. It is a lot more. Profe Villalobos, would you like to go next?
Sure. This is the second question. Okay, good. Trying to follow. Yeah, so I wasn't pressured, but more questioned. It was more the questions like, why are you doing this? Again, you know, as a Latino Mexican, it's really, it's not common for a male going into education or even going into a profession. My younger brothers, they tried, you know, they went to community college and they dropped out, and they're doing great. You know, they're doing construction, all the things. My youngest brother is actually making more money than I am making. And, you know, so it's a little bit like, whoa. But anyway, going back to the question, it is a little bit more of the, I did feel pressure to become someone, you know, to have a degree, to have education, because I knew that I only had two options, as I mentioned. But again, once I got here, it's more the question from family, from my culture, and even from colleagues, you know, because again, you're not the quote unquote traditional English professor, you know, so it's always trying to fight and trying to prove to people that, yes, you are, you know, and then you're more capable of teaching, you know, everything from ESL, grammar, and all that, all the way to Shakespeare, you know, and Spanish and English and Latinx literature, Mexican literature, Chicano literature, magical realism. So it's a lot of that, but it's more not necessarily the pressure, but it's more the questioning, you know, that that I get from different types of positionality that I have, you know, as a Latino, as a man, as an immigrant, as a gay man, all these other positionalities. Is more not the pressure, but the questions I have to deal with.
Thank you. Roslyn, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Was I pressured to pursue a degree that perceived to pay more? Yeah, I was. I was pressured to be you know, a nurse or just pursue a degree in nursing and, you know, go all the way to the top with that, because, you know, it's a career for women to be in, right? That's what it was pushed for. We're supposed to be caretakers, you know, and I did want to take care of people, but not in that way, because there's other ways to take care of people, which is exactly what, you know, a degree in arts and humanities is pursuing, is helping people in creative and different ways. But yeah, I was definitely pressured, and it actually made me want to drop out, because the pressure was too much. And I was also like I said before, I wasn't fulfilled with any of the classes. And then on top of that, I was getting in trouble. And so I had to leave the city, right? So I left, and that pressure sort of was gone, and I could sort of like pursue what I wanted to pursue. But then there still was the push, because I talked about law school, right? It's like, okay, well, lawyers make a lot of money. So there was a lot of enthusiasm and support around that. But I didn't want to fight in that type of way either, because it was a very male-dominated career. And it was just a place I didn't want to have to navigate. Also, the justice system, well, it's not a justice system, right? There's not much that changes within the system, and I didn't want to be a part of it, and I didn't want to try to change it from the inside. So I really was sort of stuck, you know, like, okay. So it was like, well, what makes me happy? Taking care of people. So like social services was that like route to take care of people. But as we know, it doesn't pay a lot. A lot of social services, they don't pay very well. And so there is this real question of, yeah, you know, you want to pursue what you love and what your passion is, but let's be real, money is a very, very real thing. And I think it's a risk, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to take the risk of, yeah, well, I'm not going to get paid enough, and, you know, I'll be paycheck to paycheck, right? But I'm on the right path because there's something out there for me. That's what I just kept saying. There's something out there. I don't know what to name it, and I don't know what exactly it is or the position is, but it's out there. And so I just had to really take the risk and take the challenge, and then stumbled upon, you know, a mentor that, you know, trained me, and then got into the really passionate about the labor movement. And I was like, this is how I want to fight. This is how I want to change things, because it's fun to fight bosses. And it's fun to represent working class people and my community. And so I just had to throw away that pressure and get rid of it. Just throw it away. It's not worth hanging on to. And you have to take a risk. Anything in life, you have to take a risk. You're going to be uncomfortable, but that's the exact feeling that you want to go for, is being uncomfortable, because that's where I found my career. Now I know what I am, union organizer.
Thank you. Next question we have is, what skills did you gain from your humanities degree that you found useful in your career? And start the question with Profe Villalobos.
A lot of skills. I think, you know, teaching humanities, teaching literature. I think Sarina mentioned that the whole concept of human experience. So because you teach everything from critical thinking to literature to fiction to poetry. So you're very aware of that. There's a lot of emphasis on narratives, personal narratives, and a lot of compositions classes. And you learned a lot about students' lives, and from the struggles of being an immigrant to really difficult situations that you don't know how to handle, but you have to, because you're an educator, you're a professor, so you have to figure out ways to be a counselor, to be a professor, to be an educator. So you have all these skills to communicate both in orally and in writing, to teach students how to communicate the same way, and to learn from them too. It's just that I think as educators, we tend to forget, and specifically in academia, that we are working with humans. You know, we are working with students who have a lot of experiences. So we're just so focused on teaching them the content, but we're not really learning or allowing ourselves to learn from them. So I think that's one of the main skills that I do apply to my personal life, you know, being a good listener. And every, you know, I kind of pride myself in doing that. Like, I'm a good listener and I can have a really good conversation with whomever. I'm a very shy person. When I'm outside my space and my zone of comfort, but you know, those skills that I learned as an educator and as a writer and as a teacher, it's you know, you apply them everywhere else. I, you know, when you get your contract for your car or anything else, you know, legal stuff. I remember taking a business English class back in college, and I learned a lot from it. I learned how to write a cover letter. I mean, I can go on and on, you know, and I have been in hiring committees as well. And you realize how much being involved in this field, in this careers, is so helpful, because, you know, again, you have so many skills in communication, in writing, and any other things that can go on. But yes, I have gained a lot of skills, and I'm still learning. You know, I'm definitely learning a lot more. And that's the thing I love about, one of the things I love about this career, is that you never stop learning, you know, because again, every semester, every student, every project that you're embarked on, you're learning something from anyone else. So I like that a lot.
Thank you so much. Sarina, would you like to go next?
Sure. I mentioned before that, you know, when you learn, as opposed to like going into more kind of trade-centric majors, like engineering or biology, that's training you for a specific job, I found that learning to, you know, like in humanities, it is about learning to understand how, you know, the human mind works. For me in psychology, I took that skill set and I used it on everything that I worked on. I used it in advertising, because I had to understand the market. I had to understand how to communicate a product in ways that would translate to an ad that someone can listen to for 30 seconds and will be prompted to make a purchase. I use it in marketing, in strategy, because I have to not only present an idea in ways that can move people to do certain things that I'm asking them to do. Writing really is just like one of the best skill set, and I don't understand why it is so underrated, because what other skill can you take that you can essentially like transform someone's like mind, you know, just by having them read something that you wrote or fall into a book or a story and essentially transfer your mind to them. It's magic. It's like science fiction. It's one of the best skill set that you can have is that communicating skill. The arts, you know, I used it essentially to be able to communicate to the graphic designers that I had to work with for any advertising projects, you know, or any marketing projects, be able to kind of tell them, okay, this looks good, that looks good. It's just communicating. Like, there are specific ways to communicate in certain jobs. And if you have a shorthand in that, it saves so much time and people will enjoy working with you all the more for it, as opposed to you're kind of like, I don't like it. I don't know why. You know exactly why, because you're trained in it. So sometimes, yeah, everything that I learned in school and throughout life, I've used in all of my jobs.
Thank you. Roslyn, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I can go next. Things that or skills that I've gained from my humanities degree. There's a huge list of them, so many. I think the first one and the most important one, I think for me was, and just like a precursor, like, you know, I came from a really broken home and communication was very unhealthy. So I almost learned how to communicate in such different and healthy ways through my time throughout college and my humanities degree, because we learned a lot about like people's stories and how important they were. And so you learn a lot of empathy, and you start to really empathize with people because stories are so powerful, right? And I mean, that transfers directly into my career now, right? I have to empathize with workers, even though I don't work there and I'm not experiencing those working conditions. I have to empathize with them and have compassion with them about what they're going through. And then it goes into also just like the communication skills, right? You need to know how to communicate with so many different types of people. The arts and humanities really does prepare you for that, because you do learn about a lot of different types of people and cultures and backgrounds, and you write your own stories too, right? And you learn a lot about yourself. And even through like my poetry classes, I learned so much about myself and learned how to communicate in a different way than I had been before. And I was really tapping into that creative side, which I knew a STEM career wouldn't really satisfy that. And I wouldn't really be able to tap into that creative side, which is so important too. Because we're humans and we're like really creative beings. So it can't be removed from, it's just like innate in us, right? Like, it's just, we don't get the opportunity to like tap into it. And the arts and humanities really, really gives you that opportunity to tap into it. And it's almost a form of like self-love, because it's like, you're just figuring out things that you didn't really know about yourself before. And it really allows a lot of space for that, especially the classes you take and the professors that you have. Just an overall great community, but definitely interpersonal skills too. I can definitely relate to the quote that Pega put in the chat. Yeah, interpersonal skills, so important. Creating rapport with people, creating really deep rooted relationships within the community that lasts for a really long time. Those are just like really super important. And you really do get all of the skills to grow relationships like that. There's so many opportunities to like be a part of certain things, right? Like the PATH program and other programs, I'm sure, that exist throughout all the campuses for arts and humanities. Public speaking was another one that I really gained. I never would have thought that I'd be okay talking in public and just being like, I didn't really prepare today for the questions, and I never thought of that. I would be that type of person to just be like, oh, I could just talk off the top of my head. And I never saw that for myself. I never thought that I had that type of courage to do that, right? Or that I could learn how to communicate, because I was just so, trained to communicate in very unhealthy ways. And then writing, of course, writing is just an overall just great skill to have. You use it in every single job. I'm sure every one of us here has to utilize our writing skills, and we all have them because we use those skills so much during our time at school. So yeah, I mean, just a plethora of skills that I probably don't even know that I have yet, that I haven't tapped into, that I'm sure I'll learn as I, am on this journey of this career. And like Profe Jorge said, like you are always learning, and that's the beauty. That is really the beauty of it, is that you're always learning something like very interesting too. Like, it's not just like learning a math problem, even though math is cool, but it's like there's so many different answers and so many different ways to approach things. So it's just the best.
All right. Asma, would you like to take on the question?
Yeah, so I feel like the arts and humanities is like really a foundation to everything else, because as folks have mentioned, it really gives you that sort of awareness in the world in an artistic, empathy, as Roslyn has shared, like social justice oriented and creative sense that I wouldn't have otherwise. And it allows you to think more critically and gives you, at least for me, it's given me refuge in this world of like overstimulation and oppression. And it just allows me to do my work more effectively. I work as a policy associate, so it allows me to research more thoroughly and communicate more effectively, not just through writing, but also speaking, which is something I do often as I push for campaigns through city council. And also what Sarina has shared earlier, it's not really a skill set, but it's a mindset. And it's really what guides me through everything career-wise, and also not just in my professional life, but also my personal life.
Thank you. Professor Heinzman, would you like to go?
Sure. I think at its heart, like the arts and humanities is really about connecting and communicate and really having this compelling narrative. And so both of those will serve you in whatever you do. I work with new educators, and something I'm always talking to them about is really valuing the students that they have in their classroom and understanding that the moment they walk in the door, that they have value beyond measure, and seeing all the brilliance and beauty that they have inside them. And then you as a teacher is like, how do you leverage that? And also, how do you push back against dominant and oppressive narratives that are out there that really marginalize certain communities or devalue certain students? And how do you, as an educator, reframe it so that you're really truly advocating for the human beings that are in your classroom every day, and really seeing that value and then expanding upon that value? Because too often I'll hear educators say things like, oh, well, those parents don't care. And it's like, no, all families care about their children. All families value their children. Or they'll say that child's not motivated. It's like, no, all children show up motivated. We just have to figure out how to have them engage in the material. And then, that's my responsibility as a teacher, to figure out, how do I help you engage, and how do I help you find meaning in this material that I'm teaching? And so the humanities are a huge part of that, because that's where this art of storytelling is. And this art of really putting together a compelling narrative that can really advance ideas and people's, value really throughout the world. And really, so I think humanities are at the core of it. I also work obviously with like new math teachers, and even that is really important to have a narrative. I was talking to a new math teacher this week. I was like, why are you doing that order of topics? Like, where is the coherent narrative? Where's the through line? And like, because I'm lost. I bet your kids are lost too. And they aren't making meaning is the problem then. And so like, how do you string together these concepts in a way that seems useful and meaningful and makes sense to them so that they can engage in those? And so, yeah, I'll be quiet.
So I just want to say thank you to all the panelists for the amazing and just really inspirational stories. And so we have some questions in the chat that are coming in from students and people coming to the call. So the first question is from Alice, and it says, for the people in the trenches of school, what was the little piece of hope that helped you all through that season? And whoever wants to take on that question can.
I can answer this because I feel like it kind of touches on some other questions also. I had a huge support system and a huge community behind me that was like keeping me accountable for things, and lots of mentors also as well. And yeah, I mean, there were times I didn't have hope, but they made me reassured that, to keep hope and to keep going. And so when I didn't have it, they did. So I think support system's huge.
To add to that, I also think one thing that has helped me is I feel like I can get so caught up in the details and the little things and in my everyday life and all the things that I have to get done. And sometimes just thinking about the bigger picture has helped me and just shift my perspective more to like what the end goal is, what I'm here for. And so that's just one piece of advice that I have.
Thank you. Another question we have is, what do you say to those people who say, this is from Mesa, what do you say to those people who say technology such as ChatGPT will take over jobs in arts and humanities? And what is our strength as in arts and humanities, people that are involved in arts and humanities?
I can answer because I know we've had that conversation before in our department as English professors, and I know Professor Motaleb has also had that situation or those many circumstances. I think again it goes back to human experience. There's this really cool video from TED that talks about poetry, and it says poetry comes from poesis, which means to create. And there was this there were these panel of poets who were reading from different selections of poetry so they would be identifying if the poem was written by a person or by the machine or the robot. And they were able to identify all the poems who were written by a machine. Because again, it was missing that emotion. It was missing that, as I think going back to the other question about the skills, you become a really good reader too. You can actually see who wrote what in the connections and the word choices and the choices that the writer is making throughout in the punctuation and all of these nuances that you're able to identify, and you can actually see if it was written by a person or not, because again, it's that human connection. You learn so much. I think I never learned about this until I was in grad school. All of us have a voice as a writer, So it doesn't matter if you're a writer or not. When you are writing, you become a writer and you have a voice, right? So and you bring in all of your cultural elements and all these upcoming. No, I'm sorry. Your how you grew up. That's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, it's always you always understand, identify as well that that this was written by a machine because it's missing that. So going back to the question, I think we are getting to that point because all of this time we have been removing ourselves, especially in other careers and in STEM and businesses. We are removing that human connection, that human experience. So that's why we're getting to that point. So I think as humanities and educators, it's our responsibility to enhance and to promote that human connection, and thinking about as an educator, changing the writing assignments or even the projects in general to bring in that connection, that meaningful writing, about themselves, about your experience and your understanding. So I think we need to bring back that human experience into not just writing and everything, I think podcasting is huge, videos, all these things. So we have to kind of bring those aspects that technology offers us and use them to our advantages as well.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. As a writer, and not just a writer, but writer of science fiction, in a world that people's memories are erased in the name of peace, and that decision was made by artificial intelligence because, like all the data in the world tells us that our conflicts are essentially stemmed from humans. As a writer of that and seeing like artificial intelligence being out there, I do have a very strong feeling about it. And the answer to it is each other. We as a community need to make decision on where we stand our ground. Is artificial intelligence being used just to satisfy our curiosity, because living in our society that is very hyper capitalistic, that tool is going to be used and exploited by people in power with money, because it's just like any tool, right? It's like, if it makes money, it's going to be used. And usually the people who use it will use it for, things that are going to make our society even more, like, there's just going to be more issues around it. So to me, it's just like, when we make a decision to purchase what we, like, if we make a decision to not buy from Amazon, that's a collective issue. And so less people will purchase from Amazon. If we make a decision as consumers to purchase more from mom and pop businesses, those things will thrive. So where we end up putting our money and our minds, those things are going to thrive. Where we don't, those things are going to die. So no, it is not innocuous in any way. And it actually, as people in humanities, seeing that as both creators and as both consumers, I think we have to take a stance in where we think, what do we want to protect?
Just wanted to say thank you for everyone for your responses. Asma wanted to share something.
Sorry, in response to that question, or?
Oh, I think it was me that wanted to share something.
Well, we have about, our time is up. I wanted to give Asma a few moments to share something about an event coming up.
Oh, yes. So exactly a week from today, there's a tenant protections ordinance that's going to council. The draft ordinance was just released. And, there's a high rate of evictions right now in the city of San Diego. Evictions not only result like in a family losing the roof over their head, but also disrupts the student's education. And so we haven't had anything in the books to protect renters and their families for over 2 decades. The last one was a tenant right to know law, which was passed in 2004, that offers very limited protections. And so this is really transformative in preventing displacement and homelessness. And so I am calling for you all to attend the city council meeting if you are able next Tuesday at 2:00 p.m. And also in the meantime, I know many of you are local students who want to stay and remain in San Diego and have the opportunity to build your careers and your families in your home. And so if you can contact your council members and let them know, like, for example, I'm a student at Mesa College with the goal of completing my degree, and I want a future that allows me to grow my career here in San Diego. And so I'll put some sample talking points into the chat, but I would appreciate the support for the council meeting next Tuesday. Thank you.
I can't believe time just flew by, and I was trying to help Ichi keep track of time, but wanted to take a moment to thank everybody for being here. We have a survey in the chat. Andrew just dropped it. If y'all can help us out by filling out the survey, we'd really appreciate it. And Professor Caitlin, any words from work-based learning before we awkwardly end this Zoom?
We're just glad that everybody came together to share your journeys, your lessons learned, your very personal, vulnerable background stories. And so really appreciate all of the panelists. So if we can drop some love in the chat box, that would be amazing. And please fill out our survey. It's got a section in there. If you want to share individual notes with the panelists, you can. We'll be sharing that with the panelists. So thank you so much for coming, and hopefully this helped you in considering what kind of career path you want to go and pursue, and also find some tips and strategies and folks that you can lean into among the panelists today. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.